few more callers. I know that we've had some interest in someone named ClearAsCrystal, who is an ex-atheist and wants to talk to us about how we can know God. So this is going to be fun. This is what the whole show is about.
Right.
Crystal, can I call you Crystal?
Sure, that's fine.
Perfect. All right. Hi, welcome to the show.
Hello, Crystal.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
What you got for us?
Yeah. So tell us how we can know God.
Well,
why are you no longer an atheist?
Wow. Okay. Well, well, you know someone when you meet someone, when they answer you. God, I know, as an ex-atheist, no one could prove anything to me. So I find that interesting to try to prove something that is unseen.
Is that what you think an atheist is? Is somebody who's proved that there's no God, or do you have a different definition of it?
No, an atheist, well, as far as I understand, as far as I was an atheist, I figured if I didn't see God, then, or he doesn't answer me or whatever, then I wouldn't know or wouldn't believe that he was there. So that would be my understanding as an atheist. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's changed.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And of course, being an atheist is an individual experience as much as being a theist is. So let me see. So for you, your reason for being an atheist is you couldn't see God and God wasn't answering you when you tried to talk to him.
Yeah, and plus, what really made the change was being told about evolution as science, and that kind of really was a breaker for me, because I thought,
oh, interesting.
Wow.
Okay, so you're saying change. So you weren't always an atheist. You were someone who believed in a God, and then you became an atheist, and now you're not anymore. Is that kind of the progression there?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
What was it about evolution that was a factor there? How did that sway you one way or the other, if at all?
I just couldn't accept or believe that if a God that I would actually look up to, and that if God was God, existed, that was the best he would be able to do, was to start something and then just let it roll from there. Which was what some theists believe evolution is, I think, but I just couldn't accept that.
Okay.
So at any rate, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious about what brought you back out. So we've got a pretty good idea. And kudos, by the way, you're very good at summarizing these points very succinctly and moving us along. So thank you for that. So we've got an idea of what you eventually went into atheism with. Hey, can't see God. God isn't talking to me, even though I'm trying to talk to him. And also evolution seems like a weird process for an all-powerful being to choose as creation. So what brought you back out the other side then?
Well, I was like 15 in sophomore in high school when evolution was taught as science. To me, that changed it. It was very easy to become an atheist at that point. It took about a good 5 years of looking around the world and my experience and realizing that man does not know how to deal with things. Man could not get things together, and not by himself. And it was basically, I saw a Lord of the Flies existence on the earth, and we needed a grown-up. That's basically how I saw it, and I'm being very honest here, and that just didn't make sense to me at this point, that man could really do very much right. I mean, obviously man can do a lot of good things, but not get it all together the way I would think, So anyway.
That's interesting. Do you mind if I jump in real quick? Because I've got a question for you with that. Because to an extent, I agree. Like, humans just kind of do need a grown-up sometimes. But if you're looking around the world and you're seeing that humans just can't get it together. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're hurting each other. They're hurting the environment. They're, whatever it is that you're seeing as a problem. And you say, hey, well, clearly we need someone better than us, or clearly we need an adult, or, some God figure. If God exists and we're still not getting it together, I don't know, what have you seen as an example of humans with a parental figure? Because if God exists and we're still not getting it together, then clearly he's not helping much, right?
Where is God? Right. I get that. What I understand, and actually, man has free will. We have our own minds. We have our own hearts. And we have our own minds, our own will, and for God to have us seek Him, it would be out of our own will that you actually turn to Him. Now, if you don't want to know Him, you don't. You don't have to. It's up to you. But He will answer you. I'm not just saying you have to make it up either. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to. You don't have to, wish to a certain extent, pray to a certain extent. You just have to turn to Him, and He will answer you.
You didn't answer me.
So why do you think? Why do you think this God answered you, and is that why you're no longer an atheist?
Well, I know He answered me because I was I guess, do any of you know what depression can be, or how?
Oh, yes.
Okay. The morning I got up, I couldn't get up out of bed. I had to roll out of bed because I was so depressed. It was like clinical depression.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry to hear that.
And that would be my last day. I knew that I could do anything like this. This was something had to happen. So I went got myself through the day because I'm pretty strong-willed with doing things for myself, like most people. You get up, you go to work, you do whatever you have to do. And at the end of this day, I just knew, I said, well, now I just went through all my options. What do I do? And something I didn't know if you understand the difference between a thought and someone else, but this was just a very small thought, mind, thinking, voice, I'm not even sure, but it just asked me, why don't you call out to God? And I actually answered it because I knew it wasn't me, because I said, well, because I don't believe in God. I mean, how would I call out to someone, and certainly someone I don't like at this point, if he did exist, and he started us with evolution, I don't like him. I don't see the point of him to be there. Why would he do that? Why would God just start everything and leave us like that? So anyway, that was my dilemma at that point, and very honest and all I'm saying is you can be totally honest with him just as you are. Just give him a chance. Just give him a chance to, and that's what I did when I left out when I went through my other options. Then I said, okay, well, God, help me. And that's all I said was 3 words. But now you have to understand that was at a point when I guess I had nothing else to do here. I was between a rock and a hard place, and God answered at that instant, taking everything out of me.
Okay, so Crystal, let's pause there for a minute because that's a lot of information, and I know that we kind of want to have this as a conversation because I do have a couple questions. But yes, first, thank you for sharing that. Talking about mental illness is not easy, especially, on a show that other people are watching. So thank you for sharing. And I'm sorry that that's an experience that you had and may continue to have. That's not fun. And it's not something I would wish on anyone.
Okay.
So I do want to ask you a couple things. And the first one is just, I also grew up Christian. I also deconverted for other reasons. But while I was deconverting, I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be converting. It was like waking up from a dream that was really nice and you wanted to go back to sleep, but you were being forced to wake up by your body or by the sunlight or whatever. And the entire time, I remember there were nights where I would be alone in a room crying about the fact that I was losing this relationship, that I was losing God. I honestly sought God. I was 100%. That was the ideal outcome of this whole situation would be I would prove to myself that God existed. God would talk to me. God would show me. God would come to me. And then I could put all of this questioning, all of this doubt behind me. It was a very painful process. And I know a lot of people for whom it was very painful. Now, my question for you is, why didn't God answer me?
Okay. The best I can give an example is I don't know actually, but
and that's a good answer. That's fine.
But I do know that an example or a physical example perhaps is when a seed falls into a ground. If the ground is fertile, has water,
the four patches of earth. Yes.
Right. If it's too, I would only say that's the only thing I could explain. You know, if something is not ready, as much as you think you're ready, that's all I could think of. That's really all I can explain with that.
Yeah.
And that's understandable, especially if you grew up in a tradition where that was a parable that you learned as a kid and you now ascribe to that religion again. I'm assuming it's the same religion. You didn't hear God and are now a different religion than you were when you were a kid.
I grew up, I was Catholic. Which is considered Christian, but yeah, I didn't believe everything in Catholicism, and I don't now.
Okay.
But
okay,
I'm wondering a couple of things, if you don't mind me jumping in here a little bit. I'm wondering lots of things actually, because you said some very interesting things, and these are things that a lot of people will say as the reason why they think a God is real. They were going through some difficulties. They think there's no way that they could have got through it by themselves. And it was only because of the grace of God that got them through it. And there are a lot of people who may think that their ground is fertile and they're ready to receive it. And then there may be other people who look back on it and say, yeah, I just wasn't ready for that message or whatever. I guess one of my questions to you is, well, there's an even more fundamental question here. Do you think you have to think that God is real and got you through that difficult time to keep from falling into depression again? Do you need to have that?
Okay, no, because he did answer me. He took it out of me in 1 minute, like a wink of an eye. I can only explain that.
No. I wasn't getting to the actual event. I'm wondering,
right?
Do you need to have God in your life to keep from being depressed again?
I don't keep from going to that extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, because without God, there is really no meaning in life other than temporary meaning or what you try to make of it, what others say it is, etc.
Let's shift gears just a little bit now. How do you know people who had depression and were able to get through it without attributing it to a God or saying that they heard God's voice or anything along? You know people like that?
I don't know. I don't.
Would you say it's possible?
Like I've heard. I do know there's medication people take. I know psychologically things can be talked out of. Because you go through certain, things when you're a child that you need to talk to someone about, and you still might need to talk to someone about. So
good. So you've listed a couple scenarios where somebody could get through depression without attributing it to a God's voice or something along those lines. And why do you think?
To a certain degree.
Let me ask you this. I'm going to try re-asking this question.
Yeah.
If we talked about all your reasons for thinking God was real, and you started coming to the realization that you have no good reasons for thinking it, and you acknowledge that there are other people that can get through difficult times and depression without attributing it to a God, do you think that that's something that you would be able to manage? Could you be an atheist and still manage your depression?
If I can explain, when God answers you, there's no wondering if it's him or not.
I'm not even contesting whether you had the experience with this God or not.
Right, I understand, but what I mean to say is, once you do, once he answers, you know him. He continues after that. It's not just a matter of, oh, that was one shot. Now I don't hear from him ever again, because he continues always. Not always, but I mean, he continues to talk after, or to show me things. On the way up to my steps, after I was taking my dog out that evening, 10 o'clock that evening, I was walking up, and just instantly the thought was, did that really happen? And instantly, the Lord spoke to me within my heart now this time, and he just told me, you're all right now. You're going to be all right. And I knew it was God, and there was no question. And then
I understand that you're having these. I understand that you had this event, and you're having subsequent events that seems to be confirming that the God is interacting with you and talking to you.
Right.
My question.
Right.
Let me just get this question out.
Understand.
Yeah, it's probably my bad. I'm even though I ask a lot of questions, and I'm known for asking questions, I don't always ask very clear, concise ones. So I apologize. So I'll put that on me. My question is, if we looked at these experiences that you're reporting to us now, and you yourself came to realize that you have no good way of determining that it was your God, do you think that you would be able to still manage your depression and still have a loving, meaningful life without one?
I don't know what it would be. I obviously can't answer. I'm not sure if I would be here, because he is the only reason that I'm actually alive right now. So
okay, so this is an important thing for people who are listening also. Mm-hmm. These beliefs are critical to how we navigate the world and deal with hardships. And your God may very well be real. I don't think it's the case. I don't think you were actually communicating with a God. I think you got through this yourself, and you're stronger than you think that you are. However, you may not think that that's the case. And if this is a belief that you think that you need to deal with those hardships, then I think I would not be as persistent with my questionings until you came to acknowledge to yourself and to me, or to other people, that that you can find a way to manage, like you've acknowledged that people can do, without thinking that a God got them through that difficult moment. Because that's where I am with you. Because the last thing I want, and I'm sure V too, the last thing we want is to cause you harm. And I think I don't really know what to think and where to go with this conversation, because I don't know how devastating it would be to you personally if you realize that you have no good reason for thinking that this is true. And until I can get a sense of where you are on that, I don't really want to challenge you that much on your reasons for thinking that God is real, until I can get a clear answer on that issue. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying. I understand. I hope you understand that no one can talk you into something spiritual. I do have a question, just to show you about thoughts, feelings, and memories. Thoughts, feelings, and memories. All of them are, they're there. You have your own thoughts, right? You have your own feelings, and you have your own memories. They're there, but no one can see them.
Right.
You couldn't prove them unless you spoke your thought and were honest about your thought, I guess you would say. But, but nevertheless, they're there. It doesn't matter. That's what I'm trying to say, is that maybe if you understood when God, an invisible being, can be there, even if you don't see him or hear him at this point, but that doesn't mean he's not there. Okay.
Right.
So
No, I think I
same
follow
way
you.
you're- Right.
I think
So
I follow
this
you
is
in that it's probably difficult to explain to us how important this event was to you and how real it was, to the point where you say, I know that this happened. And I can imagine it must be
sure.
really frustrating when you tell people this story and we don't find it all that compelling because we didn't experience it. So
Right.
I feel for you, because I would be besides myself if this happened and I had no good way of communicating it to others that it did. It would be really frustrating. And I think I would put that frustration on the God. Why did the God do this to me, to the point where I can't convince others that this is real? So I think I follow where you're at. However, I do still think that we could probably have a conversation about how you're validating that that was God, to the point where you would start to wonder if it really was. And I don't know.
No, you don't wonder when you meet someone. When you meet someone, let's say you meet the King of England or the Queen of England, and then you turn around and say, well, gee, I don't know if I met her or not. I mean, you met the Queen of England, right? When you meet them, if you met them in person, you know the person next to you that they're there when you meet them. You don't turn around and go, oh, okay, well, I think they're there. No, you know they are there. So you're not going to shake anything from me. That's funny. You're not going to shake something from me by worrying about what I went through. It doesn't. That was the best thing I can go through in my whole life.
That's the thing that concerns
amazingly.
me. Is that
Yeah.
that's the thing that concerns me a little bit, is that this was a profound experience that you've had. You're certain that it was this God. It got you through a very dark time. And I still don't know if challenging you on that position would make things worse for you. I'm actually still not sure.
No, you can't. You can't. You can't shake anything from, like I just said, you don't. I just met someone. You're not going to worry me to say, well, no, that person doesn't exist, even though I just met him. Right.
Well,
so
I'm glad that you feel confident in your mental health right now, it sounds like. But I also don't think that if the idea of questioning that is laughable, I don't know if this conversation is useful moving forward. Of course, if you're willing to have a conversation about how you validate these things and are open to the possibility that you might learn something from us, then definitely call back. But in the meantime, stay healthy, and as best as you can, continue to look after your mental health.
Thank you so much for calling, Crystal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Crystal. Okay, so thank you for kind of taking point on that, Anthony. I think that is exactly the kind of conversation where street epistemology and that more open kind of introspective approach is so useful, because that could have gone several different ways, and because it's such a touchy topic, and because we are concerned for her health and her safety, it is better to have conversations in as empathetic a way as possible.
Right.
I do want to. Sorry.
Oh, just on that last caller. Thank you. It could be really tempting for an atheist to want to challenge a person on their views, because we know all the arguments. And if you're good at SE, I honestly think 5 questions and she would probably start to wonder if that really was her God. The thing though, I don't know if I really want to go down that road with her, because I'm not sure if and I asked that like 3 times and I don't think I really got a good answer. It wasn't a sufficient answer to me to say, okay, go for it. Game on.
Yeah.
What I got back in return is, no, it was so real that there's nothing that you can do or say to make that happen. That's not what I'm asking.
Right.
I'm asking if it happened. And I know it sounds far-fetched. So we have to be careful with how we engage with people on these talks. And she did reach out to us too. So it's kind of tempting to push it, but I don't know her.
Yeah, exactly.
We have to be gentle.
And also, here's a really good rule of thumb. I know that at the beginning we asked her, what an atheist meant, like what being an atheist meant to her. And she said, well, I couldn't see God and I couldn't hear him. So I was an atheist. And so, of course, if that's your criteria for whether or not you believe in a God, if you hear something that you think is God, then that's going to slot right into the 2 things that you had as your reasons for being an atheist and maybe give you a turn. There are good reasons to be an atheist and there are less good reasons to be an atheist. But to make the assumption that I am an atheist because I can't see or hear God, or that Anthony is an atheist because he can't see or hear God, doesn't get us very far conversation-wise.
It was a pretty wishy-washy definition of atheist. And yeah, whenever someone says, I used to be an atheist, right? Like you hear that and you're like, oh boy, what does that exactly mean? And then it was like this thing with how evolution just doesn't seem like it could be the case. And it was just really,
it's
just a
very
odd
interesting how
definition.
many of these ex-atheists were Christians first. And then go back to the God that they believed in prior. There's a reason that you tend to go back to that. If Crystal had been a Catholic and then deconverted and then asked for help, and Anubis came to her and was like, I'm here, I'm ready to help you, then we would take a different track to that conversation. Be like, okay, that's interesting. Tell us more about that. But the fact that in a moment of stress, in a moment of deep depression, where you are more prone to things like auditory hallucination, you hear something or you feel something in an effort to preserve your own sense of self, your own sense of sanity. And it sounds very much like what you heard as a kid, those imprints, those things that you were indoctrinated to think before you quote unquote deconverted. Yeah. That's not surprising to me. That's not compelling as evidence. But
now we don't know how long she was raised with this belief. She didn't. I don't think she said, but
she said when she was 15, she deconverted, and then it took her, I think she said 7 years to get back to it.
Yeah.
But
I mean, if you're told your whole life that God will be there in your darkest moments when you need Him the most, and then it just happens to be the case, and then you're using that as your justification for thinking that it's true. I mean, I can understand how you arrive there and how you could be so sure that that's the case. But like lots of people say similar things and they attribute it to completely different gods.
Exactly.